In this video, let's take a break from forex trading and programming, and let's talk about history. History is a very interesting subject, and I've always loved history from my life. There's so many books on history. I was thinking of making a few videos on history also. I hope you will like these videos. So in this video, let's talk about the dark history of the British Empire. I've been watching many videos on YouTube. People have created channels and they are glorifying the British Empire. And I've seen documentaries on made by BBC channel in which people are saying, "Oh, British Empire, British Raj, it was such a great thing, and we did so many good things." To tell you the truth, British Raj was, I would say, was darkest and most evil part of human history. British oppressed the poor people all over the world. They treated them brutally. They murdered them. They robbed them. They taxed them heavily, or took all their wealth to Britain. Today, the wealth of Britain is the looted wealth of the poor people all over the world. This is the true fact. And in this video, I'll try to open your eyes how the British behave with the poor people all over the world. Britain was a very poor country in the time of Queen Elizabeth. It was heavily indebted. And even in their documentaries, they admit themselves that we were very poor and we didn't, nobody could imagine in the time of Queen Elizabeth that one day Britain will become a great power. So in those days, they made this company, East India Company, to trade with India. And British traders came to India at the time of Mughal Emperor Jahangir and begged him to give them trading concessions. This is a long story. You can read everything. They got the chance when his daughter was very ill and the British doctor treated her. So Jahangir gave them the trading consent. Trade was good because trade always beneficial for both sides. There's created few trading posts and they created warehouses. Used to call them factories in those days. So for 200 years, British were simple traders. They never dared raise their eyebrows looking upon the Indians. And in 1620, I think they went to America, Mayfair ship, and 100 men and something like 50 women, they went to the area that is known as close to Boston today, America. And they were dying, and the Red Indians helped them in the winter. Many men died, many women died. Red Indians were very simple people. They were living in isolation for thousands of years. They haven't met other humans. So once the British went there and the Red Indians became friendly to them. So Red Indians gave them corn to taught them how they can sow corn. And so corn is a crop that was developed in Mexico and then they spread to the rest of the world. But no, there's no Red Indians. No, but in the beginning, Red Indians helped them. But once they established themselves, made their settlement, they started killing the Red. Red Indians just had bows, arrows, and they were very simple people, poor people. So they had their guns and they killed them ruthlessly. And today there's no Red Indian in the United States. Ethnic cleansing to it. I will make another video on the dark history of the United States and tell you how dark its history is. So once the British, these Europe, most of the people, initial settlers were from Britain. So they had so much land, but they didn't know, didn't have the manpower. So they started kidnapping the African people from Africa. Oh, it was such a brutal part of history. Now they are simply skipping it over and trying to hide it. And they document it. They don't even mention it. And they, oh, nothing happened. This thing. they treated these African people so brutally. I can tell you, if you read history in depth, you'll be horrified and shocked. So they would chain these men, women in the ships under 200 and grand places. They were for weeks they will be chained and they will sit on the same place. They eat on out of 150, one every will die. And once they took them to America, they would make them work 24 hours and treat them so brutally. Say most of these men, women will die within 5, 6 years. No, they don't even mention these. Oh, we are very good. We didn't do anything. I'm not blaming the present generations, but their previous generations have done this thing, and you inherit these things in the genes. So let's come back to India now. Now, as long as the Mughal emperors were strong, the central government didn't dare even raise their eyebrows. After Aurangzeb died, Mughal Empire simply collapsed. One corrupt ruler was replaced by another corrupt ruler, and Delhi was sacked by Nader Shah, the Iranian king, brutally. He took so much wealth from Delhi, such a wealthy city, that for 4 years he forgave all the taxes in Iraq. So in those days, when Aurangzeb died, India was the richest country in the world. People were wealthy, well-to-do. There was a lot of trade. Economy was booming. Textile was their main business, and Indian cloth was popular. It was being sold all over Asia, Africa. Even the ships would take this cloth to Japan in those days. And there was a special type of cloth known as muslin. It was such a fine cloth that once it reached Britain, it became so popular among the women, British women. They just wanted to buy this muslin. In those days, you will see they had even seen the cotton. Even in the summers, they would wear woolen cloths. This was their level of wealth in those days. So once they saw this cotton cloths, muslin cloths, they said we just use them. So the local traders, they petitioned the parliament, they banned this muslin cloth because it's destroying our local industry. That was the time then they say industrial revolution started. Industrial revolution is not possible without India. And they are not telling you this thing. For an factory system to succeed, you need mass production. And for mass production, you need a big market. So India gave them the big market. They used India for free raw material and free labor, and in return they sold their finished products to India 4, 4, 5 times their original price, heavy price. Made a lot of profit for India. So the Indian people made one mistake. I have told you, I blame the Indian people who joined the East Indian Company army. They became tools in the hands of British. British used them to conquer whole India, and then they oppressed the people. They made laws. It was a police state. It was a brutal state. Anybody who would speak against the British, you sent to Andaman Island and in local as known Kalapani for their life, and they will never return. Now they are saying, "Oh, we are very democratic people," and this thing. So they are not telling you the truth. Lord Wellington came over here, fought over here. I don't think that he was a great general. In my opinion, he was just an average general because Napoleon was already defeated. He suffered the most crushing defeat in Russia in 1812 when he invaded Russia with 800,000 army. So I was already defeated, unfinished man, and battle of Waterloo was nothing. But then their history, they show battle of Waterloo as if it was something that in a whole human thousands of this is something extraordinary. It was just a very simple and ordinary battle. So let's come back to India. East India Company is soldiered by Indian soldiers. They are very simple people. British, they themselves admit in their history books that they realize that Indians are simple people, their rulers are corrupt, they spend most of their time fighting each other, they are more interested in the personal animosities. They have no big picture. So British started taking advantage of this thing. They created this army. They used in Bengal once they conquered it by bribing this Mir Jafar. They imposed such a heavy tax on the people, 20 times more tax, and grabbed everything from the people. If the mine started and millions of people died. In an article also, that author has mentioned it, but in a very glancing manner. But such a huge crime. They didn't bother about that thing. People, millions of people died. They taxed them heavily, took all their wealth to Britain. In those days, Britain was a heavily indebted country. So they used the income of Bengal, fight the Britain for roughly 100 years. This is the true fact. And they don't tell you these things in their books and in the documentary. They just ignore these things and skip it over and say. So 1857, when the mutiny took place, they call it mutiny, we call it War of Independence. People were not united. They had only one advantage. They had got very good technology. British had good technology, good guns, artillery, very good artillery. So they used it against the people, killed thousands of people brutally and mercilessly, established their rule. And after that, it was the established policy of the British government in India to keep the people of India illiterate. They forcefully deindustrialized the Indians, and their main policy was to keep them uneducated. They should those do agriculture, and all this agriculture produce will go free to Britain. They say we to give them railway. Railway system was their strategic need. Then had to transport armies to counter mutiny, so they had to make this railway. But they constructed such a heavy cost. In America in those days, if you compare the cost of 1 kilometer of railway line with that of in the same period, the British railway line that they constructed in India, there's a 20 times more costly. All the costs had to be borne by the Indian people. So for hundreds years, Indian people were heavily taxed. The policy of the British was to keep them uneducated, to keep them divided, divide and rule, and to not let them industrialize. Tata submitted British government asked permission to take permission for opening a steel mill in 1870. So when did Tata got that permission? 1920s. And that was also when British had a lot of shortage of steel, so they no let them open a steel factory. So this is the true fact. They intentionally kept the people uneducated, didn't let them educate. They intentionally deindustrialized them, used them for free resources and labor, indentured labor. Once the slave trade became unpopular and unprofitable, they used Indians for indentured labor, free labor. This is also another crime that these people committed. But again, now in their history, they are trying to show that they were very good and we did something good. Those I've seen many channels, they don't give you the big picture. Individual battles, Battle of Gandamak, Battle of Maiwand, and this thing, that thing. They but don't give you the big picture of how the British ruthlessly exploited Indians and robbed them. And Indians were wealthy people, well-to-do people. There were a lot of trade. There was a lot of commerce here. Now I'm talking about India. So these were basically three countries: Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So they robbed all of them, and then God punished them in the shape of First World War. They could not win First World War without Indian help. But they never mentioned it. I think more than 1 million people, strong army they took from here. They made them fight in the French trenches, but they never mentioned them in their documentaries. They used to tell they used to position the Indian troops in front first, so that they should die first. So I would just say the Indians were very simple. I don't know why they revolt against them. And if the guerrilla war had started, I don't think so. British had survived, would have survived in India more than 10, 15 years. But in those previous generations were not that educated, and they didn't mind serving the British. But British ruled them ruthlessly. They couldn't win First World War without Indian help. More than $50 billion of resources were taken free from India to Britain First World War. And Second World War also, without Indian help and Indian raw material, they could not have made it through. This thing, the biggest crime that they committed was that of creating a famine in Bengal. They took all the rice, creating strategic reserves for the soldiers in Britain, and people here started dying of starvation. And Churchill, the great racist, said, "These Indians have breed like rabbits, so it's their own fault." What was their fault? Because you were taking their food all forcefully, and Indians were not even allowed to import food. They were not even allowed to export food. They were not even allowed to import stuff. They were not even allowed to export their produce. So this was the thing that these people were doing. So to keep it economically backward and just use as milking cow and use all the resources freely, and they didn't pay anything return. All the things that went to Britain were free. Cost was paid by the British Indian people. So Indian people fed the British people. This is the true fact for hundreds years. There is an Indian author who has written a book, and I appreciate her for doing the research, that in Britain took more than $50 trillion of wealth to England, Britain. I forgot about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. 20,000 women and children and poor people was murdered by the British. For no reason. It was because a British officer, brigadier, panicked and thought that British Empire is in danger. Those poor people were just demanding food. I don't know why they gathered, but there was no danger. And I blame the local soldiers, the command of the British officers, who opened fire on those poor people and killed them and massacred them. But I don't know, see this Jallianwala Bagh incident being mentioned anywhere in the British documentaries and their channels, and they say, "Oh, nothing happened, and we were very good." And they say, and they ultimately they took that brigadier and said, "No, we can't take any action against him." This is what the Churchill said. So this is the true face. And before I close this video, I tell you, they did opium trade. They were biggest drug dealers in the world. Now they say Pablo Escobar and Colombia, and they were more bigger drug dealers than those Colombian drug lords. They used to grow opium in India, and then they used to take it to Hong Kong, and then they used to smuggle it to China. For 100 years, they sold opium in China and made millions of people opium addicts. But now they don't mention it. They don't just say, "Oh, nothing happened. There was a certain small thing." So I would say if the Pablo Escobar became uh, president of Colombia, and if the starts drug business on state level, would any country accept it? But British did it. Now they don't mention it in their history. The British, in those days, Chinese governor wrote a letter to Queen Victoria asking her if the opium is not allowed to in your country, not allowed to buy and sell opium, because of why you are doing this thing in China and making our whole people opium addicts. So this is the true face of British Empire. It was an evil empire. Once history will be written, people will openly say it was the most evil empire. And don't if you watch these videos by the channels that glorify British Empire and BBC documentaries that glorify British Empire, in the comments will say it was an evil thing. They robbed the poor people, oppressed them brutally, killed them brutally. Once British left India, Indians were very poor, very, very poor. Even a British civil servant writing, a young civil servant in those days came to India. I wrote to his mother, I said, I'm shocked and appalled by the brutal poverty of these people. So this brutal poverty was created by British. This was their gift. And this was the British Empire's true face. They talk about Hitler and Stalin. They did worse crimes than Hitler and Stalin in India. This is the true fact. And I wish there are more people who take history, write more books on the crime that they had committed over there. And all their victories were through bribe and deception and what they call chicanery. Chicanery is basically you make a person friend, then you deceive him. So this is what how they conquered India. So I hope you like my video and do leave your comments. And I'm thinking of making another video about dark history of the United States, how they killed the real Indians and not to talk about the Indians. Where have those people gone? Teaming with that Indians when they went to America, and about how they brutally treated the African people and how America has been promoting the dictatorships and corrupt leaderships all over the world the last 50, 60 years. They call it, we are promoting democracy. So I hope you like this video, and I hope more people will dig more into history and write the true history, not like that anarchy and stuff like that. They're trying to whitewash their British history and saying, oh, we were very good and did this thing. So write them, if they have done good thing, write it. But if they have done wrong thing, you also write it. History is part of our selves, and we should know the history. I hope you like my thing.